podcast. I'm here at the University of Illinois, and I am a senior.
I see.
Hi, my name is Perla Torres, and I am a junior in anthropology and integrative biology.
Oh, she's got her own.
I got one. I'm Ramona Montez, and I am a senior in community health at the U of I.
Hey everyone, I'm Sylvia. I'm a senior at U of I, majoring in gender and women's studies with a minor in sociology.
Hi, my name is Maria Rizzo. I'm a senior at U of I, and I'm a communications major.
Hi, my name is Luis Vargas. I'm an advertising major, sophomore at U of I.
Well, welcome everyone. Sadly, some of you are not going to show up on TV because the camera's over there and it's only pointing at us. I didn't expect there to be a flood of humans coming in, but you will be heard, and that's the important thing. So your views will be heard. And speaking of floods of humans coming in, that makes me think about immigration, which is the general topic of this show. And I put it that way in particular because it is an interesting way that you see in the media a lot where people talk about, we were actually talking before the beginning of the show about how the media likes to describe immigrants as, you know, a flood of immigrants coming in, or grouping them as just a generic group. So that's one of the things we like to do with this show is sort of push back against that kind of imagery and that kind of thinking and way of expressing things. So you guys have some different topics of study, right? In what way are you all connected to each other?
Well, we're all in the same class. It's Latina Studies 320, and the title is Gender and Migration. Yeah, Gender and Immigration.
Gender and immigration or gender and migration?
Immigration, I think.
Immigration.
It's gender and migration. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just kidding, yeah.
Oh, okay. Gender and migration. So someone described to me what that basically is. Whoever has a microphone that is willing to talk into it. Oh, here we go.
Pretty much over the course of the semester, we've been analyzing what it means to be Latino and how that's influencing just migratory patterns between Latin America and the United States, and including whatever influences it has on gender and identification, any sort of influence on those social roles.
So are you saying that the act of migration influences gender and gender identity, or it's the other way around?
I think it's the other way around, right?
Okay.
I would say it's kind of a two-way street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with migration, there's more of solidification of gender roles and what it means to be either, gay, lesbian, transgender, or anything in between.
So does that come from like the different, going from one cultural base, let's say? I don't like to say that a whole country has a single culture, but say a certain cultural base where you live, to another one that's probably very different, and so that transition affects the way you think of yourself, sort of, maybe. I'm trying to understand what this is about.
Well, when people do come in waves, as you said, humans do come, not trespassing, but through specific borders, the way they're considered by government status is more identified. They consider people to be classified under certain demographics, and because of that, there's more resistance to fluctuating gender roles and stuff like that. If that makes any sense.
Well, yeah.
I guess the way I kind of saw it was just kind of how your gender identification affects your migration, like, lesbian, gay, trans, bisexual. They have a different experience than an immigrant who is straight or someone who is not trans. And just because you're a double minority, if you're anything but straight, and an immigrant. So just kind of how that affects that, and just being a man versus being a woman, immigrant as well.
So obviously the more easily you will fit into your adopted homeland or the culture where you're going or whatever, the smoother the transition is for you, right? I mean, obviously, like if you're like baseball and apple pie and country music, then coming here to the U.S. is going to be a lot easier for you than if you have some completely different set of ideals or interests or whatever. Okay, I get that. I think I'm having trouble grasping not the point of it, I guess, but what is it about that you're studying, I guess? I mean, I understand that there's going to be differences, but how do you identify those differences?
The difference between each experience?
Yeah. How are you, is this qualitative research, quantitative research?
It's qualitative.
Qualitative.
Yeah.
So we do, we have a lot of readings that we read. We have a lot of
Thank
readings.
you.
So we read a lot from different authors and people that do research in the field as far as Border Patrol and immigration. So one of the things that we do is maybe we will find a story about a woman who's trying to come over to the U.S. versus a man who's trying to come over to the U.S. And then immigrants who come in illegally. What is it like for a woman with a child to try to sneak into the U.S. versus a man sneaking into the U.S., where the woman will have a tougher time because she have a child. Yeah. So, and then what is it, rivers that they cross and stuff. So with a child, and then the risk, and then you have to be very quiet. And if a woman have a child, chances are she might get caught. Versus a man who only have to care for himself, it's easier for him to sneak in than a woman.
So are you studying, quote unquote, illegal immigration specifically, or just because a lot of people that come here, they come here legally, they take an airplane or whatever and go to an airport and they just overstay their visa or whatever. So that's a completely different experience from what you're talking about there, right?
Yeah, so we study immigration, we also study migration, within the Latino culture. So I believe we study education too. The education of have we studied that?
I think we did a little bit.
Yeah, we covered a little of it.
Okay. This is so. Are you doing much with the history of it? Because I know that prior to this militarization of the border and this big crackdown on immigration that we've had, there was a lot of movement, pretty regular movement, seasonal workers would come and go and things like that. And so there would be probably one set of patterns for men who would come here to work and then go back to their families, and another set for whole families that would come, because I know I've done some work with migrant workers that come here and stay out in Rantoul, and a lot of times entire families come and they travel around together, how is it different now? What kind of experience is it different now, other than the obvious it's harder to get here? Is it a different experience in general, in some way that you can put your finger on, or no?
Different compared to when?
The way it used to be before people started freaking out about immigrants coming here.
I feel like that's been going on for so long. Because I feel like the U.S. and Mexico kind of have a really on and off relationship, you know, because they were welcomed here during the Bracero program,
right? But
then they were pushed back out, and then, oh, you're welcome again. Oh, no, you're not. Yeah. So it's kind of just like a really bipolar relationship, you know.
So it isn't so much like there was a way it used to be and there's a way it is now as it was there. It's gone up and down, you know, open door, closed door, open door, closed door.
It's at first they were used just for cheap labor. And now they're still used for cheap labor, and people don't like that, because why hire someone that want a set amount of money when you can hire someone that will work for less? So I think that's where many people have a problem with immigration and bringing in workers from Mexico or Guatemala or whatever. So yeah.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting way of studying it, I guess. So it's not so much that you're studying a different topic as you're studying the same topic from a different angle, from the angle of gender. Is there any particular thing that stands out that you've discovered so far about differences in how people are treated because of gender that really strikes you in some way, that you were like reading and go, oh wow, I had no idea that this was going on?
Yeah. Do you guys want to talk at all? Do you guys have anything?
What was interesting to me was the I forget the name of it, but the jail where the families are sent.
What's that called again?
Yeah, the detention center. Yeah, that. And like how they're like they like for I can give you an example. So like we read someone came in and told us a story about a woman. We had a guest speaker and she told us a story about a woman and her children. She like basically went to like the border patrol and said like my life is in danger, and she wanted to get political asylum and come over to the U.S. But instead they took her and her children to a detention center where basically she was like held like as a prisoner, and she was separated from her kids. And like as far as like legal counseling, like they didn't have anyone that spoke her language. I forgot what language that was.
It was a Mayan dialect.
Yeah.
There's no legal representation, or there's really a lack of linguistic representation because people don't really speak those dialects aside from like Spanish or English. And if you come from like a Mayan, I guess, based heritage and you don't speak Spanish or you don't speak English and you're forced in this like detainment center, then you're kind of you're stuck, because who are you going to speak to and how are you going to know about all these resources that are available, if any? So it's like they're kind of in this limbo. And the woman that was our guest speaker was Virginia Raymond, and she is I think I forget what. She's a legal counsel, and she'll go to like Carnes detention centers and other detention centers in Texas to go help these women or their families, just to tell them what they can do or to help represent them in their court hearings when they're doing their fear or credible fear interviews. So they'll be there to try and, I guess, guide them along. But it was really sad to hear that, some of these women, that they don't know what's going on, especially then. It's even worse because they don't have that connection. Whereas other women, at least there are like lawyers here who will provide legal services, and they have some sort of Spanish language like requirement so they can sort of communicate their information. But these women are just kind of stuck.
So is it that the Border Patrol has no one that speaks, say, Kankobal or whatever, or that they just choose not to offer that as a service because it's like, well, there's too complicated? Or do we know?
I don't know.
Is there a way of figuring that out?
But
I think if there is someone who speaks that language, it'd be hard to find them.
Well, it's not that hard. You can
really?
You can go all around
I don't
town,
know much about.
There's a whole Mayan community.
To bring them into like, I think it would be hard to find them too, to like, especially to help like law enforcement. So like a lot of people are scared to step up.
That's interesting.
And fear their life.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there are translators or people who will do it. It'll just be harder to find them, especially with languages that are not as commonly spoken. I mean, I guess I don't really know, if you look at the university, who's really going to be learning Mayan, instead of like Spanish or a language that's more commonly spoken. But it's possible. So especially these women are even further marginalized, and they're like in these detention centers. So why wouldn't you want to help these women? I mean, isn't the whole point to get them out of your country? So
I'm not sure what the point is really, because it seems like there's a sort of a the public face is go away, and then on the side they're going, oh, come this way. Because they want the cheap labor, as you were saying. They want people to come in. They want them to not be able to argue about wages and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I would look at you more, except it's really hard to like turn away from the microphone, so I consider yourself included, even though I'm not like turning and looking at you very much. I mean, the business likes illegal, quote unquote, immigration. A lot of people don't like it for reasons that don't really make much sense, and we could talk about that, but I guess that's kind of a different topic altogether. But I would guess that the people who are sort of anti-immigrant anyway are really, really, really anti-gay, lesbian, transgender immigrant, because that's a whole other level of, we don't want you here. You know, not only do we not want you here, we really, really don't want you here because of you're spreading whatever it is you're spreading. So I'm trying to think how to ask this. Is it, in your studying of this, you are discovering different stories, right? You're listening to different stories of people that have come here. How are you going to put all this together, and or are you just studying it and you're going to learn about it, or do you have a plan to put it together for some purpose? Like you're going to produce a paper at the end that says, here's what the government can do, we're going to deliver this to somebody, or I mean, what is the end result?
Well, I know part of our contribution to the class as a kind of final project, we have designated group projects. For instance, for a few of us here, we have a project that is Carnes Detention Center Archive. So we collect information based on happenings around Carnes, statistical data, personal interviews, or just general things that are related, and also to introduce some sort of resources that people could utilize and make that publicly available on the internet.
Okay, that sounds good. Because what I fear happens a lot with things that go on at the university is it produces knowledge for other people who are studying that topic to learn from, and it's sort of like a private conversation that goes on and on and on and on, and no one else ever hears it or has any access to it. So this is cool. This is cool that you're going to do that. So you're going to produce something that will then be available for researchers or anybody that's interested to do something. Oh, that's very cool. And so getting back to speaking of gender and immigration, we have an interesting gender mix here. I'm just noticing that there's is there a reason for that, or is this just who's in the class, or what?
I would say that the class is pretty consistent with this group.
Yeah.
5 women, 1 man. The ratio is pretty consistent. I think maybe some of it with because it is so focused on gender and Latino culture, that it might be aimed more towards women. I don't know. Like I said, I am a guy in this group. I don't know what kind of other attraction brought people to this topic.
So this is a weird question, but is gender a woman's subject by some people's imagination?
I would hope not. But
I mean, doesn't everybody have, or at least identify with some sort of gender? I mean,
well, I think the title of the course is Gender and Women's Studies. So I don't know. I hope this isn't true, but I feel like some people might write that off.
Really?
Yeah.
So what attracted each of you to this particular course?
You want to go?
With me particularly, I have family members who came over from Mexico and migrated. And because of that, I wanted to learn more about my heritage and what kind of social and economic situation surrounded the time period in which people I personally know and are attached to came over to the United States.
Well, for me being a GWS major, I recently picked up social as a minor. And since I had already studied Black women in diaspora and taken gender-related Asian studies classes and Native American gender-related study classes, I figured, hey, why not Latino studies? It's my last semester. Let me find out a little bit.
Cool.
Let's see what's going on.
Okay.
So that's what drove me to this class.
Okay.
Last semester I took my first Latino studies class, and I really loved it because I'm half Mexican, so it was it kind of never had a history before, so I just kind of wanted to know about the history of it because like Luis, my family immigrated from Mexico as well, and I identify more with my Mexican heritage than my Irish heritage, so I just got really into it, and this seemed like an interesting course to me.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, I share the same sentiments as my peers, since I do have, my parents were the ones, and lots of my family members had immigrated to the United States, but this was like prior to it becoming more heavily militarized, so this was like late 70s, early 80s when they came. So I remember hearing stories about how they came here, and like, it's just crazy to think that at our age, that's when like they had already made it here, they had already gone through everything, and I don't know, it's so difficult. And then I guess it's even worse now, but I guess I never really understood, like, you know, you hear about immigration and people coming, but like, you know the reason they do it's because, you know, to seek better jobs, to seek a better life for their families, because it's worse in their countries. But in this class, like, I would have never known that, oh yeah, it could have been part of because U.S. involvement in these countries. You know, I didn't know anything about the history, so that's why I was really glad that I was actually going to learn that in this course. So yeah, it's very enlightening.
And your story?
Why did I decide to take the class?
Yeah.
I wanted, one day, me and a group of friends, we were all around, we were talking, and one of my friends, Sabrina, she was saying how she was writing a paper on Border Patrol and how some of the women that were trying to sneak into the U.S. were being raped. So I was surprised at my lack of knowledge and about what was really going on at the border. So I decided to take a Latina class.
Okay. The history of it is really interesting, and I'm glad that you're going through that, because I'm a second generation immigrant myself, parents from Mexico, and they came here long ago. So it was just a matter of just like crossing the border. There was nothing to it. They didn't do anything. They just crossed the border and then went through, you know, various processes. And my father ended up getting citizenship by joining the army. And it wasn't like an official thing. It was just he joined the army, and in order to have the paperwork in order, they produced papers for him saying, you know, that he was from Texas. Because he just told them he was from Texas. That was as simple as that. It was just, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Texas. Okay. And they wrote it down. And then he had official papers, and then it went on from there. So citizenship wasn't this big, like, mysterious thing back then. It was just like, oh, okay, whatever. You know, I don't care. But you're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking several different things at once. It's interesting to realize the conditions. Like, I heard all those same stories about, you know, like I came here because I wanted a better life, and, you know, things were really bad at home, and we were this and that, you know, all those different things. But realizing why they're like that is a really important factor, because so much of what we hear through the media about immigration is just based on people are coming here and doing this, you know, and they're, sometimes you hear they're escaping from violence or something. Well, why is it violent? I don't know. Maybe they're just crazy like that over there. You know, those people are just crazy. They act like that, and no wonder they want to get away from that. But the thing that goes along with that story is, well, if they act like that there, then the people coming here are just going to bring that with them. You know, that same crazy way that they live at home, they're bringing that, and they're going to, you know, pollute our decent world or whatever with their crazy antics. But there's nothing about the drug war. There's nothing about the trade. There's nothing. None of those things are discussed in the media. That's always just taken as like it's just the natural state of affairs, that certain countries are poor, or certain places have a lot of violence and all that sort of stuff. And so, like you were saying about the perils of crossing the border, I mean, a lot of that comes from the fact that it is so militarized, and there is this intense, you know, like pressure on people crossing to hide and sneak and do all those things. And anytime you move things out of the light, then whatever goes on in the dark is the kind of stuff that goes on in the dark, you know. So naturally, you're increasing danger for people who do this because of the posture that you take towards them when they're trying to do that. You know, if you just open the border and said, hey, everybody come on in, nobody'd be raped or robbed or anything. They would just, there'd just be a big long line, and they have to line up, and it would be boring. But so it's interesting. I'm sorry, I don't mean to lecture you. I'm just talking because you're all sitting there, like, someone say something. Do you have a comment? Oh, I thought you keep looking at him like he has a comment. Okay. Yeah, anyway, we're getting close to the end of our time here. Are there any final thoughts that anybody wants to share about the class, about your experience? Thoughts?
Well, I mean, we're here to talk about, like, stuff that's not usually talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess something that was really interesting about the class to me was learning about policies that affect immigration, like NAFTA.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that stood for before, but it's really interesting how people blame Mexico or, like, South America for all these problems, but really, like, we're part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something a lot of people don't stop and realize.
No,
like,
they don't.
With NAFTA, we outsource a lot of technology and a lot of factories to, like, the border.
Yeah, have you studied those factories along the border?
Yeah, it's so messed
it's amazing.
up. And like, so many people are getting hurt because we need to have our DVD, Blu-ray players, and it's crazy, like, just how complicit we are, because if you want to see real change, you have to think about where you're getting your stuff from, and if you're going to blame people, you need to know where it's coming from and who's doing the work for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's been very interesting. My little alarm is going to go off any second now. I can tell just by looking at it. I really appreciate you guys coming. Hopefully, you can come back sometime and when you're farther along in this, and tell me more about it, because I'm really interested in the topic. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what to ask, because it's a new way of looking at it for me. I look at immigration a lot, and I think about it a lot, but I haven't thought about it in terms of, like, what is the experience of someone, who's gay or trans or whatever. And I think there's a lot more that I need to learn about that, just in order to understand the topic, because when we're trying to help people at the Immigration Forum, it'd be nice to know who needs the help and what kind of help they need. So you guys are all welcome to come to one of our meetings if you want, and share your knowledge with us, because we don't get a lot of that kind of thing. Anyway, you have been listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM and UPTV. I hope you will join us again sometime. Anyway, see you later.